Ivan Stupak, military analyst, joins our broadcast. Ivan, hello, glad to see you.
Hello, same to you, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for responding. So, this is the information we have regarding Crimea. Special Operations Forces destroyed occupiers' logistics facilities in Crimea. On the night of August 26th, special operations were carried out and in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, after which logistics facilities that supported the functioning and combat supply of Russian army units were put out of action. Please, could you kindly comment in detail on what precisely happened in the Crimean Peninsula? And of course, I'd also very much like to thoroughly discuss the potential prospects of effectively using our advanced Flamingo missiles, possibly in this particular strategic direction.
Okay, I understand. Look, based on the brief and dry reports about logistics, they're primarily referring to the railway line. The railway lines, the branches, the rail connections, these are the main means used to supply Crimea. Of course, the second most important is road transport, but the foundation is definitely the rail connection, the railway. Everything goes through here. Military cargo, civilian goods, everything, absolutely everything. And only a small percentage is transported directly using freight trucks. And Ukrainian intelligence operatives, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces are working both on the approaches to Crimea and deep within Crimea itself. The main objective is to ensure that the railway lines are paralyzed for as long as possible, to make it as difficult as possible, and to prolong their restoration as much as they can. In addition, there is the issue of attacks by Ukrainian drones, small FPV drones at a distance, attention, of 30 kilometers from the line of demarcation in the corner of the occupied territory of Ukraine. Kherson, Zaporizhia region, my apologies. It might seem like 30 kilometers is nothing, just a trifle, but for an FPV drone, that's a very long distance. Usually they fly 7, 10, maybe up to 15 kilometers, but here it's 30 kilometers. And what's interesting is that they're targeting Russian trains that are hauling a large number of fuel tankers to other occupied territories. There are videos online showing Ukrainian drones just slicing through this sausage of tankers, hitting one after another and causing the fuel to spill out. Of course, the damage isn't catastrophic, but still, we need to make sure there's less fuel in Crimea so that Russian equipment faces certain difficulties due to fuel shortages. And of course, there's also the civilian aspect. We need to make occupying Crimea as uncomfortable as possible. By the way, the local official admitted this. He said, yes, there are difficulties, yes, there are problems, and according to his modest but confident forecast, none of this will end as long as this so-called special military operation continues.
Ivan, I want to ask you about something else, about our wonderful Flamingo missile. There have been more reports again about its about the tests of this missile. It can fly up to 3,000 kilometers and carry a warhead of, I think, 1,150 kilograms.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please comment on what its current status is and whether we might be able to use it in, I don't know, the coming months? What are your forecasts and, let's say, your questions about this innovation and this missile as a military expert?
As for the population of Flamingo on the territory of Ukraine, let's put it this way. For now, again, we have to admit it. We're not looking at things through rose-colored glasses, but we acknowledge that the Flamingo missile, like all the previous Ukrainian inventions and developments that were announced before, things like Trinbita, Marichka, Peklo, they haven't managed to implement anything more serious, more tangible. Yes, there are photos, yes, there are videos, but so far there have not been any strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. It's hard to explain with a single fact or factor why this is happening. Perhaps it's a combination of everything. Maybe there are bureaucratic problems. We admit this. Unfortunately, we have that history as well. Perhaps there were issues with Russian ballistic missiles and cruise missiles striking production sites of something. I'm not saying they hit the workshop directly, but there are a large number of component parts that are located remotely, and maybe something was destroyed, I don't know, let's say a rudder or some electronics, for example. And unfortunately, this could have set our production back by a month, 2, or even 3. But in my firm belief, and again, this is my subjective opinion, I assert that it is quite possible that in August, the first launches of these missiles against the territory of the Russian Federation should finally take place. At the very least, I really want to believe in this, and I hope that no external factors will interfere. Overall, everything that has been announced looks very promising, but again, we are dealing with reality. Once again, on paper, everything is great, everything is perfect. In reality, we'll have to wait and see. It's like comparing it to the advanced American missiles that used to be supplied to us. Remember, on paper, their technical specifications looked great. But as soon as they encountered Russian electronic warfare, there were always problems, and they had to be improved and upgraded with new systems afterwards. It's quite possible that the same thing could happen here. So it's not worth expecting the first launches to be phenomenally successful. It's quite possible that they will definitely be successful. But for engineers, this will open a new window, a new opportunity for improvement and for integrating these missiles into more modern and effective methods.
Even there's something else I'd like to ask you about. The so-called Long Neptune missile was recently, I believe, unveiled. So I'd like to briefly ask you about its specifications. What exactly is it? It seems reports say it can fly up to 1,000 kilometers. Let me remind our audience that the Moskva cruiser was destroyed by Neptunes at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And this so-called Long Neptune, the P-360 cruise missile, is up to 6 meters in length. That's right. It's 1.5 meters longer than the previous model. Please, could you give your assessment of this missile? Even if we compare it, say, to the Flamingo, which one is lighter? Which one can be put into mass production more quickly? And according to your forecasts, what are we most likely to see first in Russian social media in terms of strikes?
That's not an easy question. You usually don't have any simple questions on air. Again, we're only dealing with a theoretical missile.
Theoretical?
Yes, you said it absolutely right. Neptune proved itself in the Black Sea. The cruiser Moskva never lied. Yes, it's claimed that there were also strikes on the territory of Crimea, but there really haven't been any large-scale massive strikes. By massive, I mean everyone in everyday Ukrainian life already knows, from young to old, what an Iskander is, what a Kinjal is, what a Caliber is. For now, the average Russian citizen isn't familiar with Ukrainian names. They only learn about them from the internet. Yes, we've seen the Long Neptune during tests. Yes, we've seen it. It's that red color. And you almost want to call it something completely different by another name. But the manufacturer named it Red Neptune, so let it be the Long Neptune, let it be so. Apparently, these are test samples, test launches, and for now there's no talk of any serious production. At least there is no such information available publicly. Again and again, coming back to the beginning. I want to believe that we have no reason to stop our production line. I want to believe that the promises made by the German side, that they would help us with our rocket, will all be fulfilled. And again, judging by its length alone, it is exactly the same length as the Flamingo rocket. I would like to wish the Flamingo, Neptune, and all Neptunes good and long flights.
100%, and most importantly, accurate ones. Let's talk about something else now, Ivan, if you don't mind. Dnipro region, there, as we know, the news is not always pleasant because the Russians have concentrated a large force there. So here's what it's about. Deep State reports that Russian troops have newly occupied the villages of Zaporozhskoye and Novogorgievka. These are the first settlements to be occupied in this region. Please, what is your assessment of the situation there? And what does our audience need to know about it?
Let's put it this way. In terms of priority, Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka are number one for the Russians. Of course, lately we've also been seeing Kupiansk, unfortunately. Deep State relentlessly shows how the Russian Federation is trying to make a detour around the settlement. The other directions you mentioned, Dnipropetrovsk region, and as already noted, Zaporizhzhia, while they are not top priorities, it's only because they have a large number of people available. According to estimates, around 600,000 to 700,000 human resources are positioned around Ukraine, which allows them to make many directions a priority. And unfortunately, the Dnipropetrovsk region is no exception here. This is about occupying certain small areas. In other words, we're not talking about a large-scale breakthrough. What we're talking about is that, unfortunately, in the fourth year of the war, the Russian Federation has still managed to enter the territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region. At the moment, it's unclear how extensive their incursion is. There is still no sense of scale, no understanding of how firmly they've entrenched themselves, or whether Ukraine still has the ability to drive the Russian Federation out of there. And the last direction I'll mention is the Zaporizhzhia region. We've talked about it before, but nevertheless, it remains a priority for the Russian Federation. But again, everything is relative in terms of percentages. This is the settlement of Stepnohirsk, 20 kilometers from the city of Zaporizhzhia. The Russian Federation is relentlessly trying to reach it, sending in assault groups. The objective is to capture the town, which is situated on high ground, and begin shelling the city of Zaporizhzhia, the regional center, directly using conventional types of weaponry, artillery, Obviously, mortars won't reach that far, but even so, it's enough to sow panic in the city. And so, according to various estimates, primarily from the Russian side, some of the troops that were involved in Sumy region, and Kharkiv region in the north are being gathered by the Russian army and redeployed directly to the south of Zaporizhzhia region to reinforce their grouping.
All right, let's talk about something else now. The armed forces of Ukraine and special operations forces have managed to destroy 17% of Russian oil refining capacity. In other words, all the defense forces, so to speak. Do we have the resources to raise this figure to 20 or 25%, or even to that critical threshold, to that limit after which the Russians will really start to wonder where to get more money for the war? After all, it's clear that they will keep trying until the very end. But at some point, it will just become really, really painful for them. Do we have this capability, and what is stopping us right now?
You really like round numbers, don't you? You don't like 17%, so let's just go straight to 20.
17, yes.
Okay, let's stick with it.
I just want more.
Yeah, 17 just doesn't look good. Although remember just last week the numbers that...
No, if this could help stop the war, then of course that would be enough for us. We just came out of these events.
One is not enough. We want more, yes. Last week oil market experts were talking about 13%. Now they're talking about 18%. That's as of right now. But it's hard to single out, to separate, to dissect whether this happened directly because of the Ukrainian strikes. This happened because part of the facility is undergoing maintenance, scheduled maintenance, which usually takes place during the warmer months. So, well, in general, yes, 17% sounds impressive. I assume, no, I'm more than sure that Ukraine, having gotten a taste for oil, the tang of oil, and this so-called oil blood, will continue to attack Russian oil pipelines. What's the objective? To inflict as much damage as possible using the smallest, cheapest means of destruction so that there is less gasoline, less fuel in the Russian Federation. Obviously, they'll always find fuel for the army. Of course, military units will be supplied as a top priority. The goal is to create problems for the economy so that a black market emerges. By the way, speaking of the black market, I'm talking and reasoning with myself here. We've seen reports that the price of a liter of Russian fuel is about 70 rubles. That's, if I'm not mistaken, about $1. Yes, $1 roughly. But there are reports, again, in Russian newspapers that on the black market, yes, in certain places, yes, individually, but there are prices of 200 and even 300 rubles. So that's almost 4 times more expensive per liter. Russian, profiteers are trying to resell it to their own people. Here's another interesting nuance. Ukraine is also trying to attack the pipeline branch, which is called Druzhba. The president spoke about it, the one that goes down through the Russian Federation, down to Ukraine, Slovakia, and Hungary. It has already been hit 3 times, and the upper part of the branch goes to Belarus. This is the Novopolotsk refinery, the Mozyr refinery, and then further on to Germany. The goal is to ensure that when the Russian Federation starts having problems with fuel, with damaged refineries, serious problems, they won't be able to switch or transfer capacity to Belarusian production, so that the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko doesn't improve his financial situation at Russia's expense due to Russia's lack of capacity. In other words, less oil will go to the Republic of Belarus as well. In the same way, the Republic of Belarus will soon be begging the Russian Federation with an outstretched hand, give us a little more money so we can make ends meet in our Belarusian budget.
Well, let's also talk about a rather promising piece of news regarding Ukrainian drones. Ukraine and the United Kingdom have agreed to cooperate in this area. We can discuss this at the end. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal, held a meeting with the military leadership of the United Kingdom. One of the topics discussed was precisely cooperation in the field of drones. Could you please tell us what we can currently receive from foreign countries in this niche, which is developing extremely actively in Ukraine? I heard somewhere that we have about 900 companies involved in the production of various types of drones. I mean, it's honestly hard for me to even imagine if there are any similar examples in the world with such a concentration of companies in one territory. What do we need from our Western partners to increase the number of drones? Tell us about it.
An incredible number, 900 companies. That's a lot. That's a huge amount of competition. But on the other hand, competition breeds creativity. In the Russian Federation, it's completely different. There, everything is strictly perpendicular, parallel, everything is standardized. On one hand, yes, that's great, but on the other hand, it doesn't allow for a major systemic breakthrough. Again, here it's a war of engineers, a war of technologies. What do we expect to get from the United Kingdom? Obviously, first and foremost, it's money. Secondly, it's certain components that they can quickly supply us with, things they produce. Of course, not all the components. It's even possible that the production of certain drones or, again, components could be done by Ukrainian companies on the territory of the UK or, say, the Baltic countries and then quickly shipped to Ukraine. So in any and all cases, this ongoing cooperation is truly beneficial. It's absolutely great for us. And Ukraine, together with the United Kingdom, is much more significantly impactful than Ukraine standing entirely alone.
Thank you very much. Ivan Stupak, military analyst, was on air with Ukraine today. All the best to you, Ivan. Goodbye. Thank you.
All the best. Well, it was a pleasure, and I bid you a fond farewell for now. Goodbye.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.